of things that are wrong in the Black community.
I love it.
Yeah. Hello. It's Wednesday and it's time for Pop and Politics. We are talking about the latest in hot topics, news, and entertainment. I'm KJ, and let me introduce you to my co-hosts. We have Shelly E.
Hi.
We have Yana.
Hello.
We have T.
Hola. Jumbo.
And Autumn.
Hey.
Yes. So again, join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. And don't just comment, subscribe. Subscribe to our social media so you always know when we post new content. Check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com for up-to-date information. We are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right, ladies, let's set it off. So we are starting off tonight. Today is, again, as I mentioned, the first Wednesday in February, and February starts off Black History Month. So to commemorate that, we will be bringing you a Black History note or information at the top of each episode. So without further ado, Shelly, can you talk about what you have for us tonight?
Yes. So, hi, everybody. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about Roberta Sheridan. Miss Sheridan was actually born the year after the Emancipation Proclamation. She was born in 1864 and she died somewhere around 1918. She was a Baltimore City teacher all of her life, and her focus was on ensuring that Black students were properly educated, ready for the real world. She taught at Baltimore City School number 108, which is at South Caroline Street. It has since been renamed and renumbered. But she also taught, after post-Reconstruction during the early part of segregation, the Jim Crow era. So Miss Sheridan was a lifelong teacher, a lifelong Baltimorean. And again, she made it her duty to teach Black students how to read, write, think, mathematics, and had the skills that they would need to further them into the world. I thought this was important. I thought it was important to highlight her as since we have a new lawsuit that is going on in Baltimore City, and because, again, she was a Black woman, a Black teacher, a mother, and her goal was to teach Black children. Okay. And that's your Black fact.
Yes, thank you so much for that. And again, we'll bring this to you all every month. So get your notebooks out or record this part of each episode. This is something to share with younger people, youth, students. Great opportunity to share with them little known facts on Black history.
Shelly, can we see a shirt? What does your shirt say? Oh, okay. Now we can see it. Oh, 365. Okay, I see that.
I got it from this. If you get this book, you can buy the shirt as well. It's a textbook by Joe Freeman and Walter Milton, and it is huge, as you can see.
Yes, it is. All right. Well, great information. Thank you for that. So we're going to move right into our first topic of the evening. So, which is the vaccine mandates and voter ID. So those are two totally different topics. But what I want to talk about right now is we have vaccine mandates in countless forms. Universities, including public ones, are requiring faculty, staff, and students to vaccinate against COVID-19 in order to remain employed or enrolled. Many universities are now requiring vaccine boosters. Some states require children to get COVID vaccine to attend school. You have to show your vaccination card. Shoppers and diners 12 and older in DC now must show proof of COVID-19 vaccination to use public facilities. Same in New York City and California. But while we are required to show ID and passport in DC to eat, Democrats are pushing back on voter ID at the polls. President Biden and Democrats pushed a bill that would forbid states from requiring photo identification in federal elections. Under cover of darkness, every night, the federal government is transporting illegal migrants as fast as it can away from the border on secret charter flights into unsuspecting communities around the country. So now we also have no ID for them, no vaccination that they need to show. They're just pretty much scattered all across the country. So again, does any of this make sense? What's going on? So I want to talk with you, Shelly. Have you talk about this first? What's going on with all of this? What are your thoughts?
What I think is going on is that we are being balkanized. America is being balkanized. These policies are further dividing us. And frankly, our elected officials are a part of it.
All right.
Can you explain can you define what balkanized mean?
Oh, I'm sorry. Balkanized. We are being divided. We're being further divided. These issues are being used to further divide us, to separate people, to keep any kind of division going that keeps Americans from coming together.
All right. Yana, what are your thoughts on this? What does it all make sense? Voter ID at the polls, but no voter ID at the polls. I'm sorry, but pushing vaccine mandates and passports throughout the country.
Well, it's definitely very contradictory. So like you said, for example, in DC, we have to show our ID and vaccination card in order to eat. So we tried to do that. We tried to go to a restaurant in DC. We weren't able to get in because we didn't have all the papers. So it's amazing that I have to show all these documentations in order to eat. But when I go to vote in Maryland, like when I went to vote last time in Maryland to vote, they didn't ask for anything. So I could be anyone really. And so, yeah, and about the illegal aliens, actually illegal aliens are not required to have the vaccine passport on hand when they cross the border, but people who want to enter legally with a visa, they have to have a vaccination card already with them. So like if I have a family member, like I have a brother who does not he has natural immunity. He actually has a proof from a doctor that he has natural immunity, but he cannot come to the US because he doesn't have a vaccine card.
All right. Wow. T, what are your thoughts on all of this? The inconsistencies all the way around. What are your thoughts?
It's just confusing. No matter what they bring up, it's just confusing all the way around. Nobody knows what's going on. Have an ID to vote. Have an ID. I mean, you don't need an ID to vote. You need an ID to get in the club. You don't need an ID. You need an ID for a vaccination and an ID. Like it's confusing all the way around. Like what are we doing here? What's the problem?
All right. And what are your thoughts, Autumn, on this voter ID? No voter ID. They don't want you to have to do that, but you do have to show your passport at certain places in the country.
I agree with everyone else that it's extremely confusing. It's either we have it or we don't. It doesn't make sense at all. I think it's pretty reckless to have allow people to come over without even at least testing and seeing if they have COVID to begin with. If we're trying to flatten the line, why would we not want to check and make sure that people are coming over, that we know we have a pre-screening for them? But that's another story. It goes into immigration. Why do we have open borders? With the voter ID, I personally take offense to it because the narrative that they're pushing and the angle that they're taking on this is about race. They're making it seem as if Black people are incompetent and that we can't produce an ID. I don't know anyone that looks like myself that cannot get an ID to present at all. So I don't understand why that's even something that's being said. I was literally told to my face by protesters that I couldn't vote because I'm a Black woman. And I said, "Are you sure?" Because I could have sworn when I was in college, they literally bussed us to go vote when I turned 18. Also, when I got here from Italy, the first thing everyone was saying was, we have an app here called Go Vote Tennessee. You can literally do it from your phone to register to vote. There's absolutely nothing stopping us from that.
No,
Again,
so
Black
what
people are
they
not
say what they say is Black people or people that live in certain areas don't have cars to go get an ID to vote. So it's kind of, they're saying that it's a conspiracy against the Black people who don't have cars to go and get IDs. And I don't get it, because they can find places, cars or whatever to go do anything else. But why they don't
Well, we
need?
have Uber, we have Lyft, we have the bus.
They don't have the
We
money.
have-
These people in these areas don't have money to. It's an excuse. It's always an excuse. But this is what I brought up, the same topic, and this is the excuse that they gave me. Oh, you're privileged because you don't live in these areas. I mean, where there's a will, there's a way.
I don't think that any of us sitting right here are the exception at all to our race.
Yeah.
Not at all. Not at all.
So what's the outcome? What's the reasoning behind all of this? What do you guys think as far as that? I mean, they're pushing mandates, but then they just passed a law in New York City where if you're not a citizen, you can still vote in local elections. And of course, you don't have to show an ID. What's the point of all this?
The point is, not only is it confusion, but again, it goes back to power and control. If you can keep people in certain groups, you keep them in certain groups, give them certain issues that you think should be their issues, then you can control how they think, and certainly to a point what they do. And and both sides are culpable. The Democrats or the left may be pushing the issue of voter ID versus vaccination ID or the lack thereof. But the Republican side, the conservative sides, most of us, my side, are cowards. They are cowards to even push back. Not enough of us are pushing back, particularly at the national and the state levels where they have these mega platforms to do so. They are afraid of being called racist or bigoted, or you don't care about people who are impoverished, who just happen to always be people of color.
Well, what about the notion or the response from the left that say that why now? All of a sudden, you guys are asking for voter ID to vote. When as we conservatives do push and say that there has not been any disenfranchisement when you look at the numbers, African Americans are voting at higher numbers. So why the voter ID now?
Well, yeah, it seems to me that Democrats just want more votes, and maybe they are scared that they might be losing some of their voters, so they need to bring new ones. And that's with the immigrants, the illegal immigrants, and how in New York, like you said, you don't even have to be a citizen to vote. So to me, that's what it looks like. They just want more voters, and the people who support this the new voter legislation that you can just vote by mail. They're hoping that those people will vote for Democrats. So it's just them collecting more votes. That's what I see it.
They drive emotions. That's how that's the game that they've always played.
And aren't they dropping the illegal aliens with these secret plane rides in New York? And that's where they just passed the law that illegal aliens or illegal immigrants can vote. There's no coincidences.
Yeah, exactly. I want to go to some of the comments. So we have here, let's see. Marvin Phillips. Why even bother with a voter ID when we have a driver's license? So
good question.
This is what we're talking. Yeah, this is what we're talking about. But there are states that don't ask for any. I mean, I didn't have to show a driver's license, anything. And that was surprising to me. Like, how do you know who I am?
Yeah, well, should you? That's another question. Should you, voting is a right. Should you have to show all this to vote?
In Maryland, you do not have to. But if you are an election judge or you show up to vote, if the voter shows his or her ID, the election judge will look at it. but the election judge cannot ask for that ID unless there is some discrepancy between the information given back and forth to verify the voter. Just like if you go to a hospital, you're usually asked your name and date of birth, right, for some verified information. Similar situation when you're voting. Unless there's a discrepancy, the election judge will not ask for ID. But if the voter just shows his or her ID, the election judge can look at it.
That means you can be anyone still. All you need to know is their information. You can be anyone to vote.
That is true. You could
And
say,
vote twice.
yep.
All right.
And to me, it just seems like they just, I don't know. I mean, it seems like fraud can happen more easily when you don't check IDs. You allow people to vote by mail. Obviously, fraud can happen more easily. So I believe that the government should try to limit fraud as much as possible rather than try to facilitate it even more. So maybe there has to be other ways that how we can, if there are people that can, for some reason, cannot get to the voting station, there has to be other ways to get them to vote, but we have to know that it's them that are voting.
Right. All right. Well, we will continue to look at this. We have another comment here from Stephen. Voter ID is a new issue. It isn't a new issue. It's been on the table for at least 2 decades.
It has been.
Mm-hmm. But again, the pushback from the left is there has not been any type of documented fraud across the country to say, oh, we need voter ID. That is the pushback. So
the argument they're making, there's fraud or mistakes, errors in every election. So the point that they're making is that there has not been enough to demonstrate a large enough gap that would have turned the election one way or the other. But the challenge to that is we don't know because we've never collected that data.
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you remember, there was some reports from Minnesota. This was during the last elections where they literally were harvesting votes. Like there were people going around from door to door talking to people and basically telling them who they should be voting for, and then collecting those ballots and then mailing them. So this actually happened. So and of course, when you vote by mail, it's very easy for something like this to happen.
All right.
Well, we have to remember these people are so gullible, the ones that they're targeting, the demographics that they're targeting. So they'll believe anything, like Autumn said. They play on emotions all the time. So they'll take that one thing and run. Oh, you're limiting me my rights to vote. All you need is a freaking ID. You show your ID to go and pick up your check. So why can't you do it too? Because I'm sure.
And they're okay with showing ID at the restaurant. Like when we were there in DC and we asked some of the customers, they're like, oh yeah, we got to show this and this. And they were perfectly okay with
those aren't the people
that to buy a drink, to buy cigarettes. I think I've never bought cigarettes. I think so. To buy cigarettes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
drink.
To get into the club, you need an ID for so many things. So
it's not going to change unless people push back. And I can give you one quick example. I know we have to move on.
Yeah, this is the last part.
When I went to vote in 2020, the elections in 2020 or 21, whenever they were, when I went to vote, I didn't wear a mask, right? I walked into the polling place. I was not wearing a mask. So, they come running to me telling me I had to wear a mask. And I said, so my question to them was, are you stopping me from voting because I don't have a mask? Show me where the law is that in order to have a vote, I have to have a mask. Oh, they were just dumbfounded and, they wanted to usher me to the side. And I told them point blank, no, I am not doing a provisional ballot. I am here to vote. I'm an American. I'm a taxpayer. And if you want to add the race, I'm a Black woman. So tell me how you're going to stop me from voting because I don't have a mask.
All right.
Oh, you played the black card on them?
Well, join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. Also, while you're commenting, if you haven't done so already, subscribe. Subscribe to our social media so you always know when we post new content. That's YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Check us out on our website at www.metroconservativemedia.com for up-to-date information. We are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. All right, so we are moving right along to our rapid pop-off round. All right, so I'm going to ask a question to each co-host, and in 30 seconds or less, they will provide an answer. So first up tonight is T. All right, so T, in the past, you have mentioned your opposition to interracial dating. I want you to take a look at this clip of Irritated Jeannie and Jesse Lee Peterson, where they debate individual responsibility versus collective responsibility based on race. Take a look. So that was Irritated Jeannie and Jesse Lee Peterson. Actually, we will have Irritated Jeannie on the show within the next couple of weeks. So please stay tuned. This is going to be an exciting show. He's already confirmed. We're just trying to solidify dates. All right. So, T, do you agree with the Irritated Jeannie that Black people need to marry and procreate with only Black people and build and move as a collective? Or, as Jesse Lee Peterson stated, color shouldn't matter. It's about individual responsibility. What are your thoughts? 30 seconds or less.
A mixture of both. Yes, I do believe that Black people should only marry and procreate with Black people, as well as white people should marry and procreate with white people. But as a community, we still have to stick together and be, we gotta look out for our community, look out for our home, and then our community first. And then that way it builds and it grows. Just like I feel like we should look out for our own country before we look out for other people in other countries. You know what I mean? But starting with your home. And I think that, interracial relationships, you stick with your own. It lessens confusion in the children and confusion in everybody if you just stick with your own.
All right. Moving right along to Shelly. So a New York City actress was abruptly fired after she complained on social media about the inconvenience of road closures in Manhattan as the New York Police Department honored slain officer Jason Rivera. Please take a look at this clip.
Of lower Manhattan because one cop died for probably doing his job incorrectly. They kill people who are under 22 every single day for no good reason, and we don't shut down the city for them. So, this is fucking ridiculous. This is fucking ridiculous. What if somebody is having a heart attack in this area? Nobody can get to them because it's all blocked off for one fucking cop.
All right. So, Shelly, this actress was fired for her comments. I want your response. Should this actress have been fired?
No. And I'll tell you why. I am not of the mindset to cancel everybody or anybody just because I disagree with their comments. Now, let me be clear. I think her comments were absolutely horrible. I think they were embarrassing and ungrateful, arrogant, any other word you want to use. But I don't think people should be canceled for exercising their right to speak free speech. I don't have to agree with it, and neither does anyone else. And I know the counter argument to that is, well, the company has a right. I guess the company does have a right to do that. However, just because someone says something and they happen to publicize it, embarrassingly so, that doesn't mean I believe that they should be canceled or fired or whatever happened to her.
All right. All right. Moving right along to Autumn. All right, Autumn. Last week you spoke about Booker T. Washington. So I wanted to kind of follow up on that. So two great leaders of the Black community in the late 19th and 20th century were W.E.B. Du Bois and Booker T. Washington. However, they sharply disagreed on strategies for Black social and economic progress. Washington was a firm believer in the working ability of Black Americans, stating that they could become productive members of American society, aiding white Americans and not force social equality. W.E.B. Du Bois opposed these stances. He said that African Americans should demand equal rights, including the right to vote, advanced education, and an end to discrimination. Which was correct in your opinion, and why?
Both. Both of them are correct. I think that I honestly wish the two of them would have sat down and not have been so critical of each other, because they're such great minds. Oh man, if only they would put that together. I do feel like, because W.E.B. Du Bois, he was very, very, very critical of Booker T when it came to pushing the children to learn trades versus going to college and just getting whatever degree. He was very, very critical of that. He didn't like it at all. He felt like everyone should be pushed towards, just going for the degree. Didn't matter what it was, but the degree. That was the biggest thing. He wanted us to have status versus Booker T. Washington. He wanted us to get it a totally different way. I think had they worked together, they would have been able to suit everyone, all types of children, whether they're thinking one way or thinking another. I can't say I disagree with either. Both of them are needed so much. Even today, they're both needed.
All right.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Yana, moving right along to you. Please take a look at this clip, and then I'd like your response.
Straight. It's not me who's changed. It's the left, who is now made up of a small contingent who've gone mental and a large contingent who refuse to call them out for it. But I will. That's why I'm a hero at Fox these days. Which shows just how much liberals have their head up their ass, because if they really thought about it, they would have made me a hero on their media. But that can't happen in this ridiculous new era of mind-numbing partisanship, where if I keep it real about the nonsense in the Democratic Party, it makes me an instant hero to Republicans. The same thing happened in reverse to Darth Vader's daughter, Liz Cheney, who is now a hero to liberals simply because she recognizes Biden did not steal the last election. What a sad commentary on our politics, where simply acknowledging reality is now seen as a profile in courage.
All right. So my question specifically to you, Yana, is Bill Maher right to compare the Democrats' lack of agreement with his calling out of the party to Republicans failing to agree with Liz Cheney's calling out of Republicans?
I'm just trying to understand. So she called out the Republicans.
Right. So she called out Republicans specifically.
For not accepting the election results.
Right. Yes.
Okay. And so now she's a hero on the left.
Right. And he's a hero, or so self-proclaimed hero, on the right for calling out Democrats for their authoritarian overreach with the mandates, the masking, and things like that.
So are Republicans, or are you saying are Republicans wrong for?
Right. So is he right based off of what he's saying? He's saying Democrats lack of agreement with his calling out of the party to Republicans failing. He's comparing it. Is that an even comparison? Do you agree that he's saying what he's saying, that both parties are failing to call out their fringe?
I mean, it's very tribal. I mean, what he is describing is really the tribal way of looking at things in our politics right now. So if it's a Republican issue that Republicans care about, anyone who supports it, Republicans love. And then if it's an issue that Democrats support, then anyone who says it, then they love that person. So I mean, it's just natural. I feel like that's the human nature. So yeah, he's probably right, but I think the most important thing is what's the truth. So it's not really about like whether it's a Democrat issue or a Republican issue. It should be what actually is going on and what is the truth.
All right. That is our pop-off round. Join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. We will check the comments periodically throughout the show. And don't just comment, subscribe, as I always say. And also, if you have a question you'd like to hear answered by one of the co-hosts, email me, kj@metroconservativemedia.com. We will ask the co-host your question during our pop-off. We did get a couple of comments regarding the pop-off. Marvin Phillips says, I'm sick of this racial division jive. All right, Marvin. We have, let's see here. Oh, Marvin says, yes, Bill Maher is a far left stand-up comedian I never agree with, but lately he's been bipartisan for his show, for the ratings, though.
He's not far left, but never mind.
Okay. All right, so we are moving on to topic 2. All right, so we are talking about in this topic, CRT versus Black history. Are we telling the full story of African Americans, and is CRT helping? So, Shelly, I'd like to start off with you with that.
Are we telling the full story? I don't know if we're telling the full story, but I do think and I say we, I mean conservatives, I think we're falling into the trap of having others tell our story.
All right. Yana, are we telling the full story of African American history in the United States versus the CRT, or is CRT helping?
So neither one is happening. So from my experience, I don't think that Black history is taught properly in America, because it seems like all of the history that we get is about like the Black struggle against the starting with slavery and then the civil rights. So that's basically all that we're getting, like since I came to this country. And we're not getting history in a way that teaches people about the heroes and just people who contributed to America in general, who happen to be Black. So it has to be, in my opinion, coming from an American perspective. These are all Americans. We all have different struggles, and let's learn about people who have contributed to this country. CRT is just making things worse right now. It's not a history lesson. That's what people think. People think CRT is history. It's a theory in terms of social justice system and how race affects it. So and it's right now being really pushed into every aspect of education, which is not helping anybody.
All right. T, on to you. Are we telling the full story of African Americans, and is CRT helping?
Well, I don't think we even know the full story of our African American history, because the stories that we hear is about Martin Luther King, like Yana said, slavery, Martin Luther King, and so forth and so on. But we don't know the full story. We learn every day about something new about Black history in America. So we still don't know our own story. But as far as critical race theory, if we're talking about that as an alternative, but it's not. We never asked for that to be our alternative anyway, because we're still trying to learn our own story ourselves. So we didn't ask for critical race theory. this is white liberal stuff. They want to come up with this theory, which is not even facts, it's a theory. So they want to come up with this theory about our history and what we did, and we don't even know our history ourselves. So start there.
All right. And Autumn, what are your thoughts on this? Are we telling the full story of African American history in the United States, and is CRT helping?
No, we're not telling the full story. We're not even telling an eighth of the story at all. So, I mean, the first thing to think about is Black history is American history. It also goes all the way back to Africa. When we look at the Moors, we look at Timbuktu, we learn about Mansa Musa, we learn about, I mean, there's so much from the start, and then coming down to what we have here. I mean, Kevin Hart on Netflix, he did try to shed some light on some new people that we could have learned about, but even he left out some really, really important details when it came to Robert C. Smalls. He had the opportunity to say that he ran for Congress. In my opinion, that's one of his biggest accomplishments. He was very, very prideful about the Republican Party. If you look him up, look up any of his quotes, you'll see that he's always giving so much credit to the Republican Party. He became Congress. He ran in the 1800s, and he won. He was elected. He won in South Carolina. In fact, I think it was 3 others in South Carolina. They won. They were all Black, and they were all Republican. Also, you have Matthew P. Henson. He was, when we talk about the North Pole, we missed the mark. We could have learned about him. He discovered the North Pole along with the other man that he was with. When we learned about Thomas Edison, we should have been talking about Lewis Latimer, his right-hand man, a Black man. You know, he's the reason why the lights last as long as they do. Yes, Thomas Edison, he invented the light bulb, but it was Lewis Latimer that made it so it worked an extended period of time. So, I mean, we've even got who they call the Prince of Darkness. He is similar to the Wolf of Wall Street. So not necessarily the best person to bring up. However, he invested in Wall Street. So you have him. You have the Black Titan also investing in Wall Street. So we have these people that have done things. Some they may be the villain, and others they may be amazing. You know, but we can still learn from all of them. Don't we have villains in, you know, our history books that we can learn from, learn what not to do, also, so that way history doesn't repeat itself. But I mean, we have truly missed the mark. I will say CRT, if there's anything positive I can say about it, it is that it has truly raised the concern surrounding Black history. It has given it enough attention to where we can really take advantage of this and say, hey, let's talk about XYZ within Black history and put that into schools versus putting theory, you know, into schools, things that are supposed to be at a university and law school. It's never supposed to be in K through 12.
So I think, I'm sorry, somebody said something?
Go ahead.
So I think this is part of the trap that I'm talking about, that we allow other people to tell our stories. Autumn, when you name all those people you named, I learned about those in, I don't know, elementary, junior high school, certainly even high school. But I may not have learned all about them in high school. So why do we have to rely on the school system to teach everything? There's only 180 days that children are usually in school, 6 or 7 hours a day. How much? We're still going to have to exclude something. It's not going to take over the whole curriculum of the American history. It's going to be a part of it. So we still, as parents, as citizens, need to supplement that education. To rely on the school system, they're already doing a piss poor job.
Yeah, but to turn off, you cutting out all the Black history.
No, I didn't say cut all of it out. I'm not saying
but that's
that.
what happened. So just like you mentioned, you know,
I learned some of those things in school. I learned some of the things Autumn was talking about. I learned in school.
I learned all of that from my dad and my grandfather. My grandfather's a historian, so he did a lot with civil rights. He shed light on Blacks in Appalachia, the ones that stayed in the coal mines. So that's my grandfather. Like, he's a true Appalachian, no teeth, like you know, that's my grandfather. But so he taught me all of that so that way I would know my history. I learned about Marcus Garvey, who my granddad and Marcus Garvey, they look exactly alike. But anyways, that's who I learned everything from. And also my dad, he's Republican, and he taught me all this. He didn't want me to not know my history, not know the true history of everyone before me. I mean, my dad goes as far back as speaking about people in Africa. That's how I know.
So wherever it's taught, if we're talking about teaching this in a formal school, there's still going to have to be some exclusion and inclusion. So I'm not saying don't teach anything. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we're still going to have to decide and then still going to supplement the rest of it with our own families.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But right now, there's been no
it's nowhere near
supplementation.
enough.
And let me just,
like I said, we talk about Thomas Edison, they still talk about him. Bring up Lewis Latimer. When we talk about, Ben Carson somehow isn't even in our textbooks. I mean, he global, like he's impacted the entire world. When it comes to but it's just so many different things, so many. Even when you learn in history, they have like for your state, you have that little segment of history. I have perfect opportunity to speak about people we've had in Congress.
Well,
for instance, Robert Burt, right here in Clarksville, Tennessee. Robert Burt.
I think we see those people that you're mentioning. Those are people like way back in the day. We have new history. We have new things that more recent generations can learn.
Yes, but we need to know that we've been doing this. We need to know that. That's very important.
Supplement the education. Supplement the education. Supplement. I'm not saying that the education system has it all laid out perfect. That's not what I'm saying. What I am saying that the curriculum as it stands, we need to supplement and we can correct and maybe add to, but something is going to be excluded. Something because of the time, for all practicality, something is still going to be excluded.
Well, of course, but right now we're not getting much of it at all.
They're not getting much of the basics of anything.
Right. And for example, I work with kids, and with kids, you have to be very direct. They don't really understand like this, very small kids, like nuances, and so the way that they're receiving Black history is, the teachers have to make it very simple for them, but then the way it comes off is pretty bad. I mean, so first I remember I observed a pre-K classroom and they were talking about Martin Luther King to 3-year-olds. And they were talking about how, and there was a full class of Black kids, little ones. And they were telling them how Black kids, Black people were oppressed. And so that's all they're getting when it comes to Black history from the age of they're 3. Nothing else. And then I work with other kids right now they're learning about Martin Luther King and all that. And I asked them, so, what did you learn? What did you learn about that time period from your teacher? And they're in elementary school and they're like, oh, that white people were bad to Black people. So, I mean, that's it. I mean, this is all they're getting over and over and over, rather than
trauma,
they were
being inferior, that like it's a repeated cycle of the same thing. We absolutely need to see like put emphasis on Booker T. Washington, if anybody. I mean, y'all know how I feel about him. But still,
but I hear what you're saying.
But if you want to fast forward to right now, what's going on, you can use Idris Sandhu. Google found him in the library. He was teaching himself how to code. He's huge right now.
Autumn, I hear what you're saying. Teach them. All I'm saying is that don't rely on the school system to do it all. We need to supplement that with that information on our own. Don't rely on the system to do it. That's all I'm saying.
I know, but unfortunately, you've got people like I'm a parent now. So I had my grandfather, I had my dad. That's not the case for everybody else. You have so many people who didn't even. Their parents relied on what the school was teaching.
And that should also be. We should also
talk about. You have a lot of kids whose parents do not. It doesn't matter the race. You have a lot of kids whose parents do not get involved with their children when it comes to school, when it comes to really anything. I mean, people expect teachers to be parents a lot of times. So
I'm expecting
that's a reality.
We have to teach. Like we have to include that history. We have to.
No, I'm expecting parents.
And it's not just for Black people in America. The thing is that because it's American history, this history should be taught in all of the schools, regardless of what's the demographic there. Because this is why we also have a problem of white liberals who think that Black people cannot vote or cannot apply for an ID, because it's the white people get this idea as well that Black people were always inferior, always were victims, because think of it from, the perspective of white kids in school. They're taught to pity Black people, and that's not right.
Yep. Well, you definitely all brought up some very good points, and one thing that we are doing on this show, we're bringing out these these tidbits. We'll have this every week where we talk about Black history, little unknown facts about Black history, and we challenge you to continue this in your private time. Share this with your family, friends, children. We want to incorporate this in our daily lives, whether it be systemically in school, in your faith-based institutions, or at home. We certainly want to keep that going. So we do have to move on. So again, join the conversation by leaving a comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Twitter. I just want to go through some of the comments very quickly. I have here, let me see here. Okay. Chad Frazier. Ben Carson was removed recently because of his political views only. So again, we have this liberal leftist leaning leadership in schools that are using.
I never learned about him in school. I graduated high school in 2012. I didn't learn about him at all. If they started learning about him after me, but I went to school in Virginia and we didn't even know.
Wow.
Because they still stuck on Martin Luther King marching and Rosa Parks. We can't get past Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks because Ben Carson is.
That's it. That's all we get. A little bit segment on them.
That's all.
And we have here another comment. Shelly E is on point. So again, we will continue to check those comments. So keep them coming. Next, we are moving on to Whoopi Goldberg. So this has been all over the news. Whoopi Goldberg recently made controversial comments on The View about Jews. She was later suspended, but did this spark a conversation about racism? Take a look at this clip of exactly what she said. Do we have the clip? Okay, maybe we don't have that clip. Let me see here. Okay, I think we don't have that clip, but she basically made a comment saying that she believed the Holocaust was not about race. It was about human beings, doing bad things to people, and it was evil, but it was not about race. So those that defend Whoopi believe it is okay to be anti-Semitic because Jews have white privilege. So again, we're talking about, she's talking about Jewish people who present as white people. And so this is going towards that intersectionality of race. So I want to start with you, Yana. What are your thoughts on what happened with Whoopi?
Well, she was suspended, right?
Yes, she was suspended for 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. So Yana, what are your thoughts? I want to start off with you. Do you about what she said, and then I want to ask you, should she be fired?
Well, first of all, it's really funny to me to hear someone in America talk about things that happen in Europe without really learning what really was going on in Europe, what has been going on for centuries in Europe. And so what she's saying is just not factually correct. She has the right to say whatever she wants. So that is her right. However, also we have a right to fact check her. So she said that Holocaust was not about race. But if she really looked into it, the word anti-Semitism, it's in the definition. Semites are people who have they're descendants of the people from the Middle East, from people from where Israel is right now. Those are Semites. So sure, Jews have gone through a process of moving from out of that area into Asia and then into Europe. They actually spread all over the world. So there's Semites in Africa, there are Semites in Asia, and they're in Europe. So it is about race. And also, besides Jews, there were also the Romani people that were also put into concentration camps and murdered by Nazis because they were not European as well. So neither Jews nor Romanis were European. So that is why it's a racial issue in Europe. And me coming from Europe, people know who Jewish people are, and everybody knows. Sure, some of them can pass and all that, but pretty much everyone knows it's a racial issue.
All right. And yes or no, and we'll move on from this, but yes or no, should she be fired?
It's an interesting question. So I think that it's if the people that she's working with, if they are comfortable to continue working with her,
No, I mean, as far as what your opinion, from what you've seen, as far as what she said, do you think she should be fired?
Let her stay, but she should continue to be making fool of herself. So I would like to see her remain.
All right. I want to move.
That was so political answer, Yana.
I want to move to you, Autumn. What do you think of her comments this week on The View? Basically, she said, Holocaust was not about race. What are your comments on that? And then, yes or no, do you believe she should be fired?
Well, it was very interesting to see. Growing up, I saw her in church, Sister Act. So I saw her this way. So in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, how do you not know? Never opened up a Bible? Never once, just, when you were acting, it never came to mind. Let me see how this Jewish man looks, because he's described. We look about, he's bronze. That's how his skin tone is described. Jesus is who I'm talking about. He's a Jew, and also when we look geographically, we look at the areas, just, we can already imagine how they look. They're Middle Eastern. They have brown skin. They might be dark skin. They might be lighter skin tone. Either way, they vary in color. They vary in shades. Even when you read in the Bible, it describes them. When we talked about in Song of Songs, she was a dark skinned woman, comparable to maybe my skin tone. It said she was as just dark from the sun, very, very dark skin, and she was described as the most beautiful woman in that book. So it's obviously about race, but even just taking it a step further, has she not stepped inside of a museum? They've shown how the Jews look, and some of them look like us, and they have the word Negro on there. And it showed that they were dismembered. It showed that they had experimentations done on them. It showed a lot in those Holocaust museums. And she's also someone who has said out of her own mouth that we should know our history and that we should be taught it, regardless of how it makes anyone feel. So you would think that she would have an idea of historical facts.
Okay. Now, do you believe she should be fired for her comment?
Do I believe she should be fired? While I do find it offensive, I really do, because I am someone that observes Jewish holidays. That's more of a personal, it's a personal feeling for me. So I would say no. If they're comfortable, the person that, cuts her checks, if they're comfortable having her there, then by all means, they can keep her there. That's totally up to them, though. I don't know. Maybe she should remove herself, or just issue at least an apology, because there's just so much going on right now with all the tension.
Well, she did issue a sort of a I don't even know if you would call it an apology.
Okay.
She said she misspoke. But I want to go on to you, T. So as you know, she did say the Holocaust was not a racial issue, and it was a human issue. So what are your thoughts on that, T? Do you and then do you think she should be fired?
This is something that Black Americans have been saying for a long time. They try to compare the Holocaust with slavery, and it's just not the same. But a race issue, it's I'm trying to be politically correct, but I can't really say what I want to say. But I will say
what
that.
you want to say? What do you want to say? Say what you want.
Well, I'm saying like Jews, especially in America, they pretty much they are white. I mean, they're white. We don't consider them fair skinned or whatever, but the Jewish that are here in America, these are the ones they're not African. The ones that they say. So it's like, yeah, it is a race issue because they're not who people what and Yana said, oh, people know who the Jewish are, but do you really know? Because they probably don't look like the Jewish people that you say they look like right now. But anyway, should she be fired? No, she shouldn't.
Well, that's what Whoopi said as well. She said, in her opinion, they both that you can't tell who is Jewish. I mean, she can't tell, but trust me, you go to Eastern Europe, people can tell. And
before you go on there, I just want to move to Shelly. I want to get Shelly's point on this, and then we'll open it up to everyone. Shelly, what are your thoughts on this? Is Whoopi's comments, the Holocaust was not about race, and then also, do you believe she should be fired? Yes or no?
Okay, so let me start with the firing. That's easy. No, I don't think she should be fired just for those comments. No. However, her comments are basically part of this web that the left has created, because now they're trying to get out of their own web that they've created. According to the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, Whoopi was right in what she said. So she was right, and she was partly wrong. She was wrong on the Holocaust being, she said it was not a race issue, but it was, and it is, or it was. And ultimately, she was right about the inhumanity of humans to another human. That's just a timeless story about man's inhumanity to man. But this web that they've created, the left has created this web where they are positioning so many different categories of, race or sex or LGBTQ or whatever. They don't know which hierarchy or which one is the hierarchy takes precedence now. So they're all confused. So they're trying to get out of this web. When we had the second round, I want to follow up to something Yana and maybe Autumn said, maybe even T, because I'm a little unsure about what they were saying. I just wanted some clarification.
Go ahead. What clarification did you want?
So, Yana, you said something about Semites and that they're all over the world. So does that mean that because someone is a Semite and they all over the world, wouldn't that same logic apply to anybody as they go all over the world? I wasn't sure how you said that. What you meant by that?
What I meant by that is that it was a one origin, and so Jews or Semites are not necessarily always European. So yes, and that's why we see that, of course, people in the Middle East who are Jewish might look different from people in Eastern Europe that are Jewish, but they do, like, genetically, you can trace them back to the origin. So, right. And in Europe, we have, and it's funny to me that in America, people will say America's such a racist country. If they try to live in Europe, they will see how everybody remembers who is who and where everybody's from.
Okay. And so, okay. Now, can I follow up, KJ? My other question.
Oh yeah, sure.
Okay. Autumn. I wasn't sure I was following you. You were making the point about Jesus being a Jew. I just didn't understand that.
So I was just saying, when we read the Bible, we know that Jesus is a Jew, right? And then you fast forward through the Bible, it goes into description of how Jesus looked, and it was describing him as being brown. So I was just saying, I'm just bringing up race. That's really what that was.
So, but race, this is the problem. This is, I thought that's what you were doing. I just wanted to make sure, because I think this is part of this web that people get caught up in with the left. They make race based on only skin color. And if Semites, like Yana was saying, they have gone all over the world, all over the diaspora, as we call it. So have Africans and whomever other ethnic groups. This part about race only being skin color, and this is what gets us tripped up. Race, making decisions about people based on their skin color, is racism. And when we do it, conservatives do it, we are either falling into a trap. We're ignorant. We're feeding into the same narrative, and we are not taking a step back and saying it's wrong, period. I didn't understand what you were saying about the Jewish, I think Jewish, or the Holocaust and the slavery.
What did you not understand about it?
Go ahead.
I said that the Holocaust is different from slavery. They try to make it the same thing, the same struggle, but it's different. It's not the same thing.
Yeah, so it's not exactly the same, but there are some similarities when you compare some
it's
of
the same though. I said
no,
it
doesn't have to be the same. It doesn't have to be the same to make comparisons and contrast. There are some similarities if you want to compare the Holocaust to slavery, about people in slavery, some of the atrocities that happened coming out of slavery, things like that. And there are some stark differences, absolutely. So even historically, there have been some historical comparisons of the struggle. And let's keep in mind that the Hebrew people, before they were in Israel, they were slaves in Egypt.
I mean, that's biblical. Yes. So what's your point?
So my point is that so slavery, because it's not exactly the same, there are similarities of the struggle of the people being enslaved by their slave masters, who happen to be, in this case, at least in Israel, in early Egypt, they were the pharaohs enslaving the precursors to the Jews, and even in America. And let's keep in mind that slavery in America was one type of slavery, or one version of slavery. There's been slavery all over the world, even by people that look like each other.
Great point.
Yeah, and from a European perspective, also the way I see it, why there's been so much animosity towards Jews, because they were newcomers. I mean, they came, everybody in Europe knew that they came from somewhere else. They settled, and they were actually quickly would become pretty successful compared to the people that already were there. So then we would have governments that would set up certain policies in regards to Jews. So they would say, well, you can't own land. So if you only the native, or people who were native of this land, can own land. So that's when the Jews went into becoming merchants. Also, you can only live in these particular areas. So that's what was going on in the Russian Empire. This is prior to the Soviet Union. Jews were only living in certain areas, and only, like, let's say a tiny percentage of them was allowed to go into university. And so they're very, there was a systemic, oppression of these people, and regardless of in spite of that, they were succeeding compared to the other people there. So there was this animosity that was just brewing amongst the Europeans, and then it spilled into what happened during World War II.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about, if we could change gears, about that, something you mentioned, Shelly, about the new definition of racism. So we know the Anti-Defamation League did put out a new definition of racism. Do you happen to have? Okay, we do have that.
Yep.
So they changed it drastically. So now, basically, as you can see there, they've made it so racism is basically when you discriminate against a particular. Well, before it was, racism is the belief that a particular race is superior or inferior to another. That a person's social and moral traits are predetermined by his or her inborn biological characteristics. Racial separatism is the belief, most of the time based on racism, that different races should remain segregated and apart from one another. So that's the original definition. Now we have this Anti-Defamation League definition: the marginalization and or oppression of people of color based on socially constructed racial hierarchy that privileges white people. No more do we have this idea of anyone can be racist. Now we have it where they say it is when it's done toward people of color, and I guess by white people. So
right, only white people can be racist.
And see, that kind of But
So I have a
Racist to white people.
it's just like what I was saying about skin, right?
Inferior. Yeah.
How that is when we have with Whoopi talking. That's what she was talking about. Is she's talking about white privilege.
Right.
We felt like because in her mind, what Jews look like, they look like Yana in her mind, right? And they don't look like me. They don't look like any of us sitting right here, and they absolutely can. So I was just saying to tear down what she was trying to get at, and what other people who agree with her were saying is because it doesn't, it's just white people and their problems and blah blah blah. So it has nothing to do with race. It absolutely does, because Jews, as Yana has said, they look different ways, but there's certain distinctions that you can tell. And then also, I mean, from a biblical aspect, we know that they can look different ways. From a geographical aspect, we know that they can look different ways. So I was just breaking that down and just using different points to kind of show that. But
regarding that,
we talked about
that's
I understand what you're saying, but one thing I would like to single it out to the United States, because we know that as you all have mentioned, that Israelites, Jewish people across the continent come in all shapes, sizes, and colors. But particularly in the United States, and as far as we're talking about, many Jewish people do look have a Caucasian European look. So I would like to stick to that specifically, if we could. What are your thoughts on that? Because as you mentioned, Autumn, Whoopi is trying to say that because American Jews primarily look European, they are not are beholden to the same type of racism as people of color. So, what are your thoughts on that? Is it true? Is that untrue? What are your thoughts?
The only comment that I've been thinking also about how when, let's say, Trump or someone from the right would say something like, when, let's say, Trump, when he was talking about Muslims and there was the Muslim ban and whatever they would say, some sort of things, well, we should be wary of Muslims coming into the country, or any negative comment about Muslims, that person would be considered racist by the left. Like, that was the number one thing that they would yell out, oh, they're racist. And that's actually not accurate, because in terms of Muslims, that is not a racial issue. That is a religion. That is not, in fact, Muslims pride themselves by saying that you can be of any color, you can convert to Islam regardless of where you're from. They're white Muslims, they're black Muslims, Arabs, and so on. And it's not the same with Judaism. So yes, conversion is possible, but it's very, very rare. So
it's a culture. It's a culture with Judaism, as well as the nationality and ethnicity and religion. It's all of it tied together.
It's all of it. But the thing is that originally it is, majority of them, like I was saying, they come from an origin. So sure, yes, conversions happened, intermarriages happened.
Excuse me, I just cut it. What is that have to do with what Whoopi said? I'm talking about, she is trying to make a point that the left has made, and I want to single in on this because I want a response, that Jewish people have white privilege because American Jews in general, and I do know that some do not have these characteristics, have a European characteristics, and so they have white privilege and should not be subject to and that's what she's trying.
This is what I was saying about, we've been thinking this, Black Americans have been thinking this along, like we don't have the same struggle, and especially here in the United States, because they are of white skin, so they don't have they're white, so to speak, and they also have a sense of community where they stick together, and they have different privileges and advantages just within their own community, as well as like the music industry. And they have some Jews that are really I say controlling, but they have a strong hand in some of the things in America.
So like I was saying, it's the jealousy thing. Like, everyone just jealous of the Jews, like always.
We're not
like
jealous.
Well,
I mean, that's what was going on in Europe, and it's happening here too. They have too much
So
power.
that was part of my question, or part of my thinking, I should say, when Yana was saying about the Semites and how they spread out. So then, what Whoopi was doing, or again, she was taking the left's position that white people, no matter where you come from, it just happened that she was talking about Jews this time, that white people, at least in America, they cannot experience racism. Only Black people or people of color. That's that new definition, which is why I say, according to the ADL, Whoopi was right. But I have a question or another thought along the lines is this. So does that mean that because someone is Jewish, that they can never be criticized for anything?
Well, let me go step back. So one thing, because we want to be factually correct here. So, according to the FBI data, 8,263 hate crimes took place in America in 2020, an increase of nearly 9% compared to 7,287 reported in 2019. Of all reported hate crimes, 1,174 targeted victims due to their religion, and 676 of them, 54.9% of all religious bias crimes, are Jews, targeted to Jews. So we still have this situation within the United States that the majority of hate crimes are still targeted towards Jewish people, whether they're European or not. It's Jewish people. So my question is, how can Whoopi say, or why is this narrative going around that this white privilege, when Jewish people are still the most targeted towards for hate crimes?
Because she's separating it. She's not. They talked about the Holocaust, but Whoopi was really focusing on white, and she even said that in her comments. And I read the transcript. She said, "Well, basically, I'm paraphrasing. Basically, I'm looking at it from a Black person's perspective. They look white to me." So she said that she doubled down on that and said that ultimately it didn't matter that they had experienced the Holocaust based on race. They were white people to her, and as a Black woman, she's the victim of racism, not white people. They had the privilege. She's taking the left's view.
I wanted you to get your comment on that, T. What are your comments? Because you made some interesting comment about Jewish people and especially European Jews within the United States.
From what perspective? I'm just saying that it's. I mean, I don't know. I've said it. It's not the same struggle that Black Americans have, and we are saying that they're white because of their skin. They're not people of color. So what other option is there in the United States if you're not a person of color? You're white. We don't consider them a person of color.
I see what you're saying. Okay.
So that new definition that, sorry, Autumn, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, the new definition that you brought up, that's really concerning, that you cannot be racist towards a white person or someone who you perceive a white person. I have a story actually about that. I had a roommate and a friend who was Palestinian. And so she was from the region, where the Jews are from as well. And she was living in America, and she was in DC going to predominantly Black school university. And she also signed up for something called the Urban Business League. And she wanted to grow her business, or start a business, and she wanted to get some guidance on that. And she, like, one time I called her, and she was devastated because she was in the classroom, and it was all Black students there, and a Black teacher, professor, and she was passing out papers to everybody, and she didn't give her the materials, and she just kept ignoring her the whole time. And so when she came up to the professor after the class, she asked, like, what's going on? And she responded, like, don't you see that you don't look like everybody else in here? And this girl is Arab. And I mean, she perceived her as a white person, and she obviously was racist to her because she, like, how dare you take, a spot where, we should have had an African looking person. And this girl was, I mean, she didn't even want to like be part of, you know, she like that devastated her, that attitude. So I'm just saying, like, if that's a new definition, something like that, she can't even complain then.
Well, all she would have to do is say that she wasn't white. She was.
Well, but then someone said, well, you are, just like, you know, we just heard today when we would say, well, Whoopi said they don't look anything different. She looks, I mean, if you look at her, you will not know that she's Arab, but she was born there. All her, you know, grandparents were from there.
Does she look white?
She could pass, absolutely. I mean, she had brown hair. Like she, you know, me and her, we could say, you know, in Europe we have different people too. Like I'm not blonde, I have brown hair, brown eyes, and so that's kind of like how she looked. But she was not European. None of her ancestors were from Europe. So and she was discriminated, and this is scary because someone like that cannot even complain or say that this was racism. I mean, regardless whether, you know, what if she was white, it was still racism, and she cannot file anything, you know, according to this new definition.
Yeah, and we're at the end of our time, but would like to get you guys' thoughts on the new definition. I want to start with you, Shelly. On this new definition, compared to the old definition, is it more accurate to you, or is this unfair?
No, it's not. It's not. I don't think it's accurate at all. I think it furthers this division, like we started the conversation tonight. It furthers this division. It furthers confusion, and it furthers, I guess, animosity. To me, it's another regression, a step in the regression direction. We are still focusing on people's skin color and making determinations about them, and making our actions, what we're going to do, how we're going to treat them based on their skin color. I thought we've come a long way, but we haven't, obviously. And even on the conservative side, we're still having this conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I just think that it goes back to critical race theory. This new definition is all under this same cloud that we're going to be stuck in and going, you know, far left has put us in now. And we got to fight out of it, but I don't know if it'll ever happen because they have their stuff together a little bit more than we do.
Right. What are your thoughts, Autumn?
I agree. I honestly agree. It's wrong. It absolutely is. It's singling one race out. And anyone can be racist. Let's be honest here. Literally anyone can be racist.
Yeah.
Anyone can. I'm not about to sit here and pretend like there aren't Black people who are racist towards white people. There aren't white people who are racist towards Black people and XYZ, because literally anyone could be racist. Anyone could be. Doesn't matter. It's not one way or the other at all. So no. And I also agree. I mean, just we have to find a way to move forward. Mm-hmm. And I think that a lot of that comes from knowing about our history and knowing about what is done now and what we can do moving forward. Together in unity as a community within our own. And we have to figure that out. We do. I got to experience what that's like in Italy, not having any sort of race issues and things like that at all. Italy is about the class system. They could care less about your skin tone. Absolutely could care less. And it was a breath of fresh air. I'm literally just American there. Nothing else. You know, they were telling me
there's an advantage of being American in across the Atlantic, because even if you're Africans don't get that same respect or so than Black Americans across the Atlantic.
No, they don't. And that's why with Italy, they have that class system. Americans, we're looked at as a certain way. But I'm telling you, like, just being there, even in Italy, they have figurines of the Moors. They have the paintings of the Moors, which are the, as we would say, African royalty. They have all of that in Caserta Palace, which is the largest palace in the world. That's where I live. Not in the palace. I mean, I wish, but I lived down the street, you know, where Mount Vesuvius is, which is super dangerous. Volcano took out everyone in Pompeii. So we didn't have to worry about things like that. It wasn't a thing. They love the Moors. They have these beautiful ceramics in the stores. They give them the utmost respect. Again, it's just, I was never thinking about my skin while I was there. Not ever. No one else was even bringing it up. If anything, they would say, you know, beautiful or something like that. But we have to get to that point as well. Mm-hmm. Let's just move forward and be together. Because if a country that lacks in diversity is able to embrace me, embrace my husband, embrace my children, in a way where I never even thought about my skin. You know, when I first got there, I did, because it was just us, you know, and I was just like, oh gosh, I don't know how this is going to be in Europe. But we didn't experience any of that. It was a breath of fresh air. Mm-hmm. It really was. And I wish we could get there here in the United States as well. But we're not going to do it by doing this backwards way of thinking where we as Black people have made it in our minds where we want to oppress white people, where we want to do the same things that were done to us, making it so things can't happen for them anymore.
But that's not us though, Autumn. We're not the ones doing that.
No, I know.
I don't know about that.
Well, there's a lot of Black people, unfortunately, that support
when you look at CRT,
this.
You look at faces that are leading it.
I mean, who initiated? We're not the ones who initiated. Of course, we're going to follow up. You know, be puppets and ducks following behind whatever the white liberals do. But we didn't initiate it.
We're absolutely being used to create this.
CRT was created by Black people and white people. I mean, it was liberal. It was the Marxist ideology that they come together, and regardless of what skin color they are, they came together and they created because they want to divide. And like how Autumn said that it's when you go to another country, they look at you as American and they see you as American. So that's what we need to focus on. And they want us to be divided. So then we're not seen as American anymore. They want people to see, oh, this is a Black American, you got to treat, see them differently. Like that's how that it shouldn't be like that. And so
it just shouldn't be in a way where I don't want to see us get to a point where we become something that we've been so far against. Our grandparents, everyone has been so far against. And by us, I mean Black people. I don't want us getting to that point at all. I feel like with the drive of hatred, with the drive of division, it's really unfortunate seeing so many people that I know, their minds, the way they're thinking about things, the way they see other people has changed. And they're starting to put everyone into one bubble, one stereotype. They're starting to distance themselves. And I don't want to see us becoming anything that our grandparents, great parents, everything fought so hard against.
Yeah, we don't want to go backwards.
That's all.
Close your eyes, Autumn, because it's already happened.
Yes, and that's what I was trying to say when I was speaking of oppression and things like that. I just don't want us to become like so many of I'll say mine, because I'll put it this way. I found out who one of my family slave owners are, who I'm also related to. You can imagine how that is. But President James Polk, about 45 minutes, his tombstone is from my house. I own land where he had his slaves. My family. I don't want to continue any sort of legacy, any sort of thinking, any sort of ways that he wanted to implement that. I don't want to continue that. I don't want to be the legacy of that side of my European ancestors.
All right.
You get what I'm saying? I want to be the legacy of my African ancestors, the legacy of my European ancestors who fought with my African ancestors to get to where I am today. I don't want us trying to be on I don't want us doing any of that. I want us just to be looking this way and just.
Girl, you got slave holes in your family. Move on. You're here now. Keep on going.
You know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I do. Yana, I want to get your last word.
Shelly, you know exactly what I'm saying. I want us to get there. Like we have to keep going. We do.
Yeah, we have
No,
to
I
keep going, and we have to
totally.
not relive the past.
Yeah, and
we
it
have
makes
to
me
keep
think
going.
actually of someone in Russian history. We have, I don't know if you guys heard of Alexander Pushkin, and he is considered the father of modern Russian language. He was a writer, a poet. He was extremely brilliant, and we learn about him as a this great Russian person. And then they mentioned, by the way, he had an African grandpa. So that is, and he's taught as a Russian person. And so that's, see, that's how we were taught, like these people who contributed to our country, and regardless of who they are, their ancestry. So the same with Americans, we have such great Americans who have all contributed to this country, and that's what matters. And like Autumn said, we got to look forward, and it's the positive impact that matters.
All right. Well, on that note, we will move on. We have come to the end of the show. Thanks so much for watching. Please continue the conversation by checking us out on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. And if you haven't done so, subscribe. That way you get up-to-the-minute content when we post, and we appreciate the support. We are an independent media, and each time you subscribe, it helps to make our voice that much stronger. We are a necessary voice in news and entertainment. Check us out on our website, www.metroconservativemedia.com. We look forward to seeing you next week. Before I sign off, I want to just go to one of the comments. Zulika Bazemore. We have Zulika Bazemore watching. She says here, we Americans must keep it moving because we are all one race, the human race. We must continue as Americans to fight for freedom. So I'm going to sign off the show just with that. That's a perfect way to sign off. So count your blessings and live a life of purpose. Good night.